Hi, my name is Anneliese and today I'm presenting to you about the sacred animal Necropoleis of Sakkara. So, just to reorient ourselves, we're back up here, south of Giza, west of the Nile, the appropriate place for a necropolis, where the dead are buried in the west. So, that's where our sacred animal necropolis is. This is Walter B. Emery. He is the archaeologist who discovered the sacred animal necropolis of northern Sakkara. He's a British Egyptologist. And what led him to the discovery was that he found potsherds in 1930 with ibis imagery. So basically just shattered pieces of ceramics. It wasn't until 1964 that he was able to return for the Egyptian Exploration Society to search for what he hoped to find would be the lost tomb of Imhotep, because this is where we're at. Because Imhotep and both share the same symbolism, as we will see in a little bit. So the sacred animal necropolis date back to the late period, which is around 712 to 332 BC, and it lasts through and beyond the Ptolemaic period, 332 to 30 BC. So right around 650 BC is the time period that the sacred animal necropolis are starting to appear. And at this time, the sacred animal cults become very popular, so right around the 26th dynasty. Basically, sacred animal cults, the individuals, the pilgrims, would travel to the appropriate temple and make offerings to the gods, the anthropomorphized gods with mummified animals of the appropriate type. Basically, the sacred animals were mummified and then deposited into rock-cut galleries. And some of the most common mummified sacred animals, bulls, cows, crocodiles, ibises, falcons, baboons, cats, kittens, dogs, and puppies. So we're back up here. This is where Emery discovered the potsherds. Now you have to remember this whole area was covered in sand at the time and lost essentially. This was up in the northern Ibis area. That is where Emery discovered the potsherds, and he was really hoping to find Imhotep's lost tomb, but as it turns out, since they share the same symbolism, this is Imhotep in both, the symbolism that they shared, learning, magic, wisdom, and writing. The only problem with Imhotep being the owner of the potsherds is that Imhotep was the architect of the Djoser Pyramid, which was built 2,000 years earlier, so he would have had to have died much earlier. And the potsherds date to the late period, 750, 330 BC, 650 BC approximately. So he started to theorize that possibly the pots were left by pilgrims visiting Imhotep's tomb. Now, he returns to the site in 1964, and the team recovers actual pots with mummified ibises inside of them, or parts of them sometimes. And they excavate, and fortunately Emery passes away in 1971. He collapsed on site and died in Cairo 2 days later. He was at the pinnacle of his career. The team went on to excavate until 1976, I believe. And they buried under several meters of sand was this entrance to the northern Ibis gallery. So here we have another shot of the pots that contain the ibises. A lot of the pots were also found shoved into the shafts of 3rd Dynasty mastaba tombs, which was a curious thing because that basically meant that these structures were being reused for different purposes later on. So once you go inside of the entrance there, you'll see that this older structure was expanded upon. You can see the niches all the way down, which is where the priests would have deposited the sacred animal mummies. These pieces were recovered from the southern Ibis catacombs, which would be south of the necropolis. Basically, you can tell it doesn't really look like an ibis here, but later on, even it was appropriate to use pieces of the bird to mummify and deposit. This is a reconstruction of the site. It's made available at the Rijksmuseum, which is the National Museum of Antiquities in the Netherlands. And you can see what it might have looked like back during that time period. However, you'll notice we have full ibises, and these are also ibis coffins, but those mummies would not fit into an ibis coffin. So something else is going on here. It's leading archaeologists to wonder if this is an earlier or a later period mummy. So along with the offerings to the gods, the pilgrims traveling to the sacred sites for the animal cults were also they were traveling there to seek blessings for fertility, protection, vengeance, depending upon the god that they were visiting. Archaeologists have also recovered sacred inscribed linen pleas, which would have had, if the pilgrim was asking the god for protection, he would have included that here, stuffed it inside of the mummy or the offering, and placed it in the temple for the god. So this is Thoth, or Thoth, or Thoth, however you prefer. He's represented by the ibis, and he is the god of learning, magic, and wisdom, and writing. Find another catacomb here, and also weapons. This is I believe it's brass or bronze. It's usually found at the top of a standard heading the procession of a ritual or parade. This is a mummified ibis. You can see the hieroglyphs on the side, which is basically like the newspaper of the day, the things that may be occurring during that time period. Thoth was also depicted as a baboon. Here you can see the votive offerings as well. So little statuettes were also appropriate to offer the gods. So here you can see the baboon catacombs, niches, where the baboons are much less of amount of baboons deposited. They were harder to come by. There's a lot of evidence that there was a baboon trade across northern Africa. So anyways, it's located here. You can see the underground tunnels starting to appear. Now this is in Tuna El Gabel in Middle Egypt, but I wanted to give you an idea of what it might look like down in the baboon catacombs. Musty place if you've ever been inside of anything like this. So the pilgrim would have approached the oracle and likely knelt down, possibly placing their hands here, and they would have made their offering of the mummy or the ibis, whatever it is they're offering to the god, whispering their request to the god, placing their offering to the side, and the priest would have come by, picked up the offering, traveled down through the hallways and depositing the offering into these niches. This is Horus. He is the falcon-headed god, son of Isis and Osiris, and later syncretized with Ra. Here's the Horus mummy, the falcon mummy, and this is his area. Another votive. So now we're looking at the substructure of the area. These are the tunnels that have been carved under the ground. Here you have the Falcon precincts, the Horus, though. And then up here, the Mother of Apis. So also the cow who gave birth to the Apis bull that was interred in the Serapeum would also be preserved and buried in her own catacomb. Moving east and south, we see the Anubian and the Bubastion. This is the Serapeum Way, the Serapeum, Joseph's Pyramid, just to reorient ourselves. The Anubian. So that was dedicated to Anubis, who was the god of the afterlife and embalming. He is the god of cemeteries, and represented by dogs, foxes, and jackals. And puppy mummies were offered in honor of him. Current estimates reach around 8 million mummies. This is in action, embalming the pharaoh. This is under the ground in the substructure. This is what's left of many of the puppy mummies. It's a lot of mummies. Later in the 1800s, a lot of this was removed and sold in Europe as fertilizer. Just an idea about, also if a family pet passed away, or maybe you were walking along a path and found a sacred animal, you might pick it up and take it to its proper place of burial. So that's what this here may be. You can see the vast network of tunnels under the desert floor in Sakkara. This is, again, you can see chipped away, and earlier structures are now turning into and connecting into a system of tunnels. Bastion, dedicated to Bastet, the cat-headed goddess, and she was the daughter of Ra. Cats were believed to protect the grain from mice and disease, and also for fertility, increase of fertility. Again, we find 2 to 4 month-old kittens sacrificed and mummified. So there's a shift occurring here from sacred animal to some sort of like manufacturing operation. This is a votive offering of the cat, and oddly enough, the Egyptian word for cat is mu. This is a mummified cat, or kitten, likely. Down on the escarpment, south of the bastion, there are actually, the priests ordered for further carvings into the rock wall to be etched out so that they could store these large amounts of animal mummies. Archaeologists have used their technology to peer inside of the mummies with X-ray machines, and they've determined that the kittens' necks were snapped. So there's, again, this shift is happening from what is sacred, and it leads to the fact that there are a lot of these animals being produced, because you just don't find millions of kittens running around. Okay, so basically this remodeling of the structures during the late period, why is that happening? I mean, basically, there's millions and millions of pilgrims traveling to the area, and there's a high demand for mummies. So, much like McDonald's, it's become an industry at this point, and the structures are being expanded upon to service that. Also, we find evidence of the syncretization of gods. 2 of the most prominent gods and goddesses that we can show evidence for this is Isis, who is also represented as Hathor, and, as I discussed earlier, the mother of Apis. Osiris syncretizes begins with Ptah, and the Apis bull, later O Serapis, and the O's later dropped and becomes Serapis. Here we see Hathor with her sun disk and the moon-shaped horns. This is her area in the sacred animal necropolis, which is also in the Isis temple, so you can see how the cow and mother of Apis and Hathor are all kind of syncretizing together. This is not from the area, however I wanted to show that this is Isis wearing the moon-shaped cow horns with the sun disk, Osiris, and Horus the sun. This is a personal photo that I took at the Temple of Dendera, my travel there in 2007. This is, you can see Hathor's cow-shaped ears. Also, this is at the top of the column, you can see Hathor looks a lot like Isis here, but you can see her cow-shaped ears, also taken at Dendera. This is also not on site. I took this photo at Philae, the Temple of Isis. But I wanted to show the similarity again. Here's the sun disk and the horns, just to give some idea of how large this photo is, or this relief on the side of the wall. That's a human hand for scale. Here we have Osiris, Ptah, O Serapis. You can definitely see the Greco-Roman influence coming out. It is much different here. Okay, so again, just to show the syncretization of the gods. Here we have Osiris, the Apis bull, and Serapis. This is a painting by an American artist, Frederick Arthur Bridgman. The title is The Procession of the Apis bull. So kind of is a good, helps the imagination, helps your mind wrap around what may have been happening along the Serapeum Way. If you look closely, you can see the sun disk and the horns shaped with that moon shape. That's the Serapeum Way. So the procession would have began in Memphis, traveled likely through the Anubian down the Serapeum Way, and interred in the Serapeum. This is the Apis bull mummy. There was a lot of belief that perhaps these mummies didn't survive, but there is one in storage now because they're restoring this wing of the museum, but he's in storage at the National Museum of Natural History in London. And in conclusion, the Sacred Animal Necropolis is a place for sacred animal cult worship. The deities were basically presented with offerings, and the pilgrims would receive blessings in return. So there were many pilgrims traveling to the area at the time, and there's also signs of deity syncretization. Thank you.